My fingers trembled as I adjusted my navy blue dress for the 10th time. The restaurant bathroom mirror reflected my pale face, my brown eyes full of anxiety. The silver cane leaning against the sink seemed to judge me silently. "You can do this, Marina," I whispered to myself, applying another layer of lipstick. "It's just a date." But it wasn't just a date. It was my first date in 3 years. 3 long years since the accident that completely transformed my life. 3 years since a drunk driver destroyed my knee and my dreams of dancing professionally. My friend Julia had insisted so much that I finally gave in. "He's a lawyer, Marina. Sensitive, polite, and he said he doesn't care about your cane." Her words echoed in my mind as I took a deep breath and grabbed the cane. The Bella Vista restaurant was too elegant for me. Crystal chandeliers, immaculate white tablecloths, waiters in vests. I felt all eyes on me when I crossed the hall, the metallic sound of the cane marking each of my steps on the marble floor. Lucas was sitting at a table near the window. Dark hair, gray suit, a look that changed completely when he saw me. His smile froze. His eyes went down from my cane to my low-heeled shoes, then back up with an expression I knew all too well. Disappointment. "Marina?" He didn't stand up. "Hi, Lucas." I forced a smile, approaching the table. "Sorry I'm late." He looked around, as if checking who was watching, before finally making a vague gesture toward the chair across from him. He didn't help me sit, didn't pull out the chair. Just watched with an expression between embarrassment and irritation as I leaned my cane and sat down. "Julia didn't mention you were like this," he said, unable to disguise his discomfort. I felt heat rising up my neck. "Like this?" "You know." He made a vague gesture toward the cane. "Disabled." The word left his mouth as if it were something dirty. I swallowed hard, feeling the familiar burn of tears, but I refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of him. "I had an accident 3 years ago," I explained in a firm voice, though my heart was racing. "I damaged my knee. The cane helps me get around better." Lucas picked up the menu, avoiding my gaze. "Julia should have warned me. I would have, well, been better prepared." Prepared? For what? To have dinner with someone who uses a cane? A waiter approached, but Lucas dismissed him with an impatient wave. "We haven't decided yet." The silence that followed was painful. He fiddled with his phone, checked his watch, looked anywhere but at me. I felt smaller and smaller in the chair, invisible, reduced to just my physical limitation. "You know," Lucas finally spoke, his voice low but cutting, "I really expected this date to be different. Julia said you were a dancer. I imagined someone more active." "I was a dancer," I corrected, feeling anger beginning to supplant humiliation. "And I'm still a complete person, despite the cane." He let out a short, sarcastic laugh that echoed at the table and hit my chest like a punch. "Look, no offense, but this isn't going to work." He started to stand up. "I have a certain standard, understand? My career, my social image. I can't be seen with someone who what?" My voice came out louder than I intended. Some people at nearby tables looked in our direction. "Someone who isn't perfect for your superficial standards?" Lucas was standing now, adjusting his blazer with an expression of superiority that made me want to scream. "I'm just being honest. You should be grateful I'm not prolonging this and wasting your time." "My time?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think you're doing me a favor?" "I'm just being realistic." He threw a $50 bill on the table. "This should cover your part. Good luck in life, Marina. You're going to need it." That's when he laughed. Not a loud laugh, but that scornful, condescending laugh that clearly said he considered me inferior, worthy of pity, someone who should accept crumbs of attention and be grateful for it. Tears finally escaped my eyes. I wiped them away quickly, angry at myself for allowing him to see me cry. Lucas was turning to leave when a deep, authoritative voice cut through the air. "Is this chair available?" I looked up, my eyes still blurred with tears, and saw a tall man, impeccably dressed in a 3-piece black suit, stopping beside our table. "No, not our table." He was clearly directing the question at the chair Lucas had just abandoned. But that's not what caught my attention. It was his face. Park Ji-hoon. Impossible. Park Ji-hoon, CEO of Phoenix Enterprises, one of the largest technology companies in Latin America. His face was on every business magazine, on billboards throughout the city. He had given a lecture at the university where I worked as an administrative coordinator 6 months ago, and I had been in the audience, fascinated not only by his intelligence, but by the kindness in his eyes when he answered questions. Lucas froze, his expression instantly changing from scorn to shock, then to something that looked almost like reverence. "Mr. Park." Lucas stammered, his eyes wide. I didn't expect. I mean, it's an honor." Ji-hoon didn't even look at him. His eyes were fixed on me, dark and intense, with an expression I couldn't decipher. Was there recognition there? Concern? "Is the chair available?" he repeated, this time clearly directing the question at me, completely ignoring Lucas. Yes," I managed to whisper, still processing what was happening. Without hesitation, Ji-hoon pulled out the chair and sat down gracefully, as if he had every right to be there. A waiter appeared immediately at his side, reverent and attentive. "Moat champagne for the table," Ji-hoon ordered without taking his eyes off me. "And the complete tasting menu for two." Lucas was paralyzed beside the table, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Mr. Park, this is my—" "Your what?" Ji-hoon finally turned to him, his voice calm but with a tone of steel. "From the scene I just witnessed from my table over there, you were clearly leaving. So, I suggest you continue." "But Lucas looked at me, then at Ji-hoon, his face turning red. "We were just having a disagreement." "A disagreement?" Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow. "I heard you ridicule this lady for using a cane, question her worth based on a physical limitation, and then laugh while leaving her in tears. That's not a disagreement. It's cruelty." The entire restaurant was silent now. All eyes were on our table. It wasn't like that. Lucas was sweating. "I was just being honest about your own superficiality." Ji-hoon cut in, his voice still calm, but each word was precise as a blade. "Your inability to see value beyond physical appearance? Your absolute lack of character?" "Mr. Park, please, you don't understand." Lucas was desperate now, clearly realizing he had lost something valuable. "If I had known she was an acquaintance of yours." "Acquaintance?" Ji-hoon let out a humorless laugh. "This is Marina Ferreira, administrative coordinator at Sao Paulo University, graduated in performing arts with honors, volunteer at the Dance to Live project that teaches dance to underprivileged children. And yes, she has used a cane since an accident that prevented her from pursuing a professional career as a dancer." My heart stopped. How did he know all this? I was sure we had never spoken directly. At the lecture, I was just another person in an audience of 300. She could have surrendered to self-pity. Ji-hoon continued, his eyes returning to me with a softness that contrasted with the harsh tone he used with Lucas. But instead, she channeled her passion into teaching others to dance. She transforms lives, even with constant pain in her own knee. Tears were flowing freely down my face now, but they were different. They weren't tears of humiliation, but of something I couldn't name. "You judged her for a cane," Ji-hoon said to Lucas, rising from the chair with a fluid movement. He was tall, imposing, and Lucas seemed to shrink before him. "But let me tell you something about real strength. It's not about walking without assistance. It's about getting up every day when pain invites you to stay in bed. It's about smiling when the world looks at you with pity. It's about finding new ways to dance when your feet can no longer do the steps you loved." Ji-hoon extended his hand to me, and I accepted it without thinking, letting him help me up. His hand was warm, firm, comforting. "And let me be perfectly clear," Ji-hoon said, turning to Lucas one last time. "Marina Ferreira possesses more grace, strength, and worth walking with a cane than you will ever have running on two perfect legs." Lucas was pale now, realizing the magnitude of the mistake he had made. "I'm sorry if I had known." "If you had known she was important to someone powerful," Ji-hoon completed his tone-cutting. That's exactly the point. You should treat her with respect because she's a worthy human being, not because someone important values her. He pulled a different chair for me, on the other side of the table, carefully took my cane and positioned it within my reach before sitting down again. Now get out of my sight before I consider mentioning in certain professional circles the type of person you really are. Lucas practically ran out of the restaurant. I sat in silence for a long moment, processing everything that had happened. The waiter arrived with the champagne, pouring 2 glasses with precise movements before discreetly withdrawing. "How do you know all that about me?" I finally asked, my voice still shaky. Ji-hoon took a sip of champagne, a small smile playing on his lips. "Because I pay attention, Marina. But we never talked. Not formally." He leaned forward, his eyes meeting mine. "But I was in the audience when you asked a question during my lecture 6 months ago. You questioned my approach to inclusion in the corporate environment, arguing that true inclusion isn't just about having ramps and elevators, but changing the mentality that people with disabilities are different in the first place." I remembered. I had been the only person to question a point in his presentation, and everyone had fallen silent, nervous. But Ji-hoon had smiled and spent 20 minutes discussing the subject with me, admitting I had a valid point. "After that, I got curious," he continued. "I asked the dean about you. I discovered your work with the Dance to Live project. I even made an anonymous visit once, saw you teaching a group of children. You were smiling, even though I could see your knee was bothering you." My heart was beating so fast, I thought it would jump out of my chest. You watched me?" "Not in an invasive way," he quickly clarified, looking almost shy for the first time. I was impressed. You challenged me, made me rethink entire policies in my company, and all because you experienced the reality I was trying to understand only theoretically." I had no idea. "Why would you?" He smiled, and it was a genuine warm smile. "I'm just a CEO who is impressed by a brilliant woman." The waiter brought the first course of the tasting menu, salmon carpaccio with capers and truffle oil. The presentation was a work of art. "Ji-hoon," I began, still trying to process everything. "Why did you do this? Why did you intervene?" He was silent for a moment, swirling the champagne glass in his hand. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more personal. "Because I've wanted to do this before, and didn't have the courage. Because I should have invited you to dinner months ago, but I was afraid you'd see me as just another rich executive trying to impress someone. Because when I saw that idiot treating you like that, I realized I was wasting time being afraid, while unworthy people had the chance I wanted." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "Are you saying that?" "I'm saying that when I said, 'I choose you' back there, it wasn't just to humiliate that man." Ji-hoon held my hand on the table, his touch gentle but firm. "It's because I really choose you, Marina. I chose you 6 months ago, when you had the courage to challenge me in a room full of people. I chose you when I saw the passion in your eyes teaching those children. And I choose you now, not despite the cane, but despite all the obstacles that tried to diminish you." The tears returned, but this time I didn't hide them. They were tears of relief, of hope, of something I thought I had lost 3 years ago, the feeling of being truly seen. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "Then don't say anything yet." Ji-hoon smiled, that warm smile that completely transformed his serious CEO face. "Just have dinner with me. Tell me about your work, your children, your dreams. And let me get to know you the way I should have done months ago." And that's what we did. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about his childhood in South Korea, about the pressure of taking over his father's company, about his own insecurity of never being good enough. I told him about my accident, about the nights crying because my body no longer responded as before, about the decision to teach instead of dance, and how that had become my true calling. When we finished dessert, a delicate chocolate souffle, Ji-hoon stood up and extended his hand again. "May I take you home? I'd love that." He picked up my cane naturally, handing it to me, but offering his arm as additional support. We walked together out of the restaurant, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel people's stares. Or maybe I just didn't care anymore. In his car, a discreet black Mercedes, Ji-hoon hesitated before starting the engine. Marina, I know tonight started terribly for you. And I know I can't just show up and expect you to give me a chance just because I was your knight in shining armor for 5 minutes. It was more than 5 minutes, I said softly. He smiled. Still. What I mean is, can I see you again? Really? Not in a restaurant full of people, not as a dramatic rescue, but just the two of us? I looked at this man, powerful, successful, admired by millions, and saw something no one else saw. Vulnerability. He was genuinely nervous about my answer. Yes, I replied, feeling a true smile form on my face. I would really like that. 3 months later, I was at Phoenix Enterprises headquarters, being introduced as the new inclusion and diversity consultant. Ji-hoon had created the position especially for me, but made it clear to everyone that I had been hired on merit, not because of our personal relationship, which was already publicly known after we were photographed together at a charity event. Ready? Ji-hoon asked, lightly touching my hand before we entered the conference room full of executives. I looked at my cane, then at him, and smiled. Always. Because I finally understood that my cane was never a weakness. It was just part of my story. And Ji-hoon didn't choose me despite it. He chose me including every part of who I was. And that made all the difference.